I think a lot of us, when we heard that you were leaving TastyLive, obviously most people are completely shocked. And it's because you've obviously built your whole life around markets, doing that whole thing. I think sometimes people forget that you're a serial entrepreneur, did the whole think or swim thing, then made a jump and did something else. And this is kind of part of your broader MO. But I think a lot of us got lulled into a false sense of security and the news drops. So talk to us about that. What led to the switch? And can you explain a little bit about the timing? Why then?
Um, sure, because so I am definitely an entrepreneur. I'm a little bit of a psycho in that sense. Um, for the last 44 years, I have worked, essentially for myself. I have uh, eaten what I've killed, basically. The only two times I've ever received a paycheck in 44 years were, well, right when I got out of college, I had a job for about 6 months, but that doesn't count. Um, when we got bought out by TD Ameritrade, and then when we got bought out by IG. Only times I've ever received a paycheck.
Decent
And
paychecks, though.
yeah, but not something that I'm used to, or whatever. It didn't register with me. At TD, I didn't cash a check for 2 years until they basically said, you got to cash these checks, they're not going to be good anymore. And at IG, I cashed a check, but I have no idea what they even paid me. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know. I swear to God, I don't know. Um, so I've been pretty much on my own. I still consider it, and always being on my own. And after you get bought out, you lose control, and it's kind of a weird thing. When we got bought out the first time by TD, I stayed on for 2 years because I just, I was, I had agreed to stay on for 3 years, but I was very close to the CEO, Fred Tomzak at the time, and after 2 years, I went to him and said, Fred, am I ever going to be the CEO of TD Ameritrade? And he looked at me, he said, not over my dead body. And so we laughed about it, and I said, listen, I got to do something else. And because I'm getting older, I got to build some stuff. And he's like, I'm surprised it took you this long. He goes, I'm shocked you're still here. He goes, you could stay as long as you want, but and they were paying me a lot of money and do whatever. But I just was like, I want to go on and build something. And so he goes, what do you want to build? And I go, I want to build this company called TastyTrade. He goes, oh my God, I hate that name. Worse than Thinkorswim. And I'm like, well, Thinkorswim worked out pretty good for you. And he goes, yeah, it did. So I go, and he said, what is it going to be? And I said, well, we're going to build this network. And at the time, there was no such thing as streaming.
Okay.
So I said, it's a streaming network, and he's like, what is a streaming network? And I'm like, we're going to talk about markets, and we're going to talk about trading. We're going to talk about math and quantitative stuff. And he goes, none of that makes any sense to me, but whatever you do, I want in. And so I go, okay. So he goes, how much? I go, well, I'll put up my money and you got to put up some money. He goes, I'll put up 20 million. Okay, which is a lot for an idea. And I go, all right, that's more than fair. And he didn't know anything. He hated the name, he hated the idea. And he's like, but I'm betting on you because whatever
Right.
you do, I think it's going to work. So I'm like, okay, well, I was going ahead. We put up the money. They put up a portion of their money at the time. And then I quickly realized I didn't want any more of their money because I didn't need their money. I didn't want it, but it was very nice and generous. And we cut a marketing deal with them and we went ahead and built Tasty, and it became crazy successful over the next, 10 years. And I kind of had this do you remember Theo Epstein, who was he was the GM of the Boston Red Sox, took them to the World Series,
Okay.
and then twice. And then he was the GM of the Cubs and took the Cubs to the World Series. Um, so he's a very successful GM. And he always used to say, they said, why'd you leave the Red Sox? And he goes, well, after 10 years, it was just time. So after 12 years at Thinkorswim, and then it was 14, almost 15 years at Tasty. We started in 2000, end of 2010 till the middle of or end of 2025. And we sold the company in 2021. And I lasted 4 years after we sold because I love what I do. I loved talking about markets. I loved the whole Tasty Nation. I loved everything about it, but I no longer had a seat at the table because I didn't want one. I was the largest shareholder of the company in a publicly traded company in the UK, but I was the largest shareholder, but I didn't want to, had no say anymore. I didn't want to say. If I wasn't going to, I tried to run the company at one point. I went to the board at IG and I said, I think I should run this company because I'm a better CEO than the people that you have. And I understand this business better than anybody at this company. And you guys have been stuck in the mud for 40 some odd years. Let me run the company and let me take it global.
But they love
And
that.
the same thing that TD Ameritrade said to me, which is go pound sand. Which, I mean, obviously everybody's entitled to that. They go, we want your company, but we don't want you to run it. We don't want you to run this whole thing. I'm like, okay, just wanted to make sure we understood. And I made a pretty passionate case for it. To move to London, I wanted to run the whole thing globally. They said no. I said, fine. Well, then I don't want to run the US anymore. I just want to do my thing. And they're like, okay, that's fine. So 4 years into the deal, I decided it's time. I can finally sell some stock. I decided it's time for me to move on. I have nothing but great things to say about Tasty. It's an amazing company. It's probably the best brokerage firm on the planet. I still use the platform, 50 to 100 times a day, and the people there are awesome. But it was just time for me to go out on my own terms. So to answer your question, the long form, it was just time for me to go out on my own terms. And I had an idea I've been working on for a couple of years, and it was time for me to go and take over a new company that I'm the lead investor in, or one of the lead investors, but I had never run the company until 2 or 3 weeks ago.